So wherever you're building a rubric, you'll go to the course tools menu. We'll go to the rubrics tool, which is near the bottom of this list. And if you're in an empty course, you've never used rubrics before, you won't see anything already here, but you will see a blue button that says new rubric. So we'll click on new rubric. Now for anyone who has used rubrics, but it was a while ago, let's say more than 3 or 4 months ago, this will look actually very different. And it's a positive change in terms of this interface and how easy to use it is. It used to be a lot more clicking and a little bit more tedious for entering all the values into this grid, and that's improved a lot, which I'm really happy about. There's some other subtle changes, like there's no save button anymore here. It just saves as you work, which is nice. If you get halfway through and something goes wrong, browser closes, you lose internet, you're not going to lose your progress in filling in this grid. We'll start by giving it a title. So the other nice thing about rubrics is that when you create one in your course shell, you can associate that rubric with multiple things. So you can reuse it for multiple assignments. If you have multiple written assignments, if you have multiple discussions every week, and you want to use the same rubric that adds up to 20 for every one of those discussions, you only have to create that rubric once, and you can reuse it for as many times as you wanted. So let's say I have a written assignment rubric. I might have several written assignments throughout the year. You'll notice that it does start by giving us a grid. The grid is 4 levels by 3 criterion, but we're not limited to that. I could add another level if I wanted, using these plus buttons here on either end. I could add, for instance, a level 5. I could add, for instance, many more rows. Or if I didn't need even 3, if I just wanted 2 or 1, I could remove these rows as well. By scrolling a little bit to the right here, and there's a trash can where you can delete a particular row. The way this is set up is that I can click into any one of these cells and just start filling it in with a description, right? So I would probably start by saying, well, what are my criterion? If this was a written assignment, I might have one particular item, which is like the strength of their argument, whatever that means. I might have a section for grammar and spelling. I might have another criterion for citations. And perhaps I have something for structure, if this is a written assignment, right? So you'll notice that I'm just able to fill in these blanks. I could say, for instance, what is a level 5 strength of argument? You know, argument was supported with evidence that was well referenced. I guess I have a citation section below, but maybe that's just about the formatting there. So you can imagine that you'd fill out the grid with different descriptions. And the nice thing about it is, you know, a student's going to see this grid as well. You're communicating the expectations for the assignment in the grid, right? When we associate this with an assignment folder, they'll actually see this grid before they even upload their file to you. They have one last chance to sort of see how they're going to be graded before they even upload their work. It's a nice final check for them where they may rethink their submission and make a few last changes, knowing the expectations again, being reminded of those expectations. And when you actually use this rubric to grade, students will see which box you've checked. And so they can basically see the feedback in how you've described the box that applied to them. So filling this out with a few sentences is nice because it is feedback that you are essentially using for every one of your students as well. So I'm not going to fill in this entire grid. You can imagine how this would go. And the tool doesn't require that you put even some text in every box. So it's possible that you could get away with filling in a few of these and leaving the in-betweens kind of to be assumed. The more you fill in, the better, though, I would say. But there's one other thing I want to show here, and that is that the default rubric, the standard layout that I got here, you can see that there were however many levels and there's points associated with each level. But right now it's very uniform, right? It's every row uses the same 5-point scale. And that's a little bit limiting in the sense that that means that every one of these 4 rows is essentially worth the same relative to the 20 marks on this assignment so far, right? What I recommend and what I would basically do for almost every rubric I created, just to give myself a bit more flexibility, I would change this scoring from points, which is sort of implying a standard set of points for every row, and I would switch that to custom points. So you'll notice that the difference when I changed from custom points, when I changed to custom points, instead of having every level be worth a standard set of points, now every row can be customized to be worth a different set of points. So maybe a level 5 strength of argument is worth 10 points, and level 4 is worth 8, 6, 4, and 2. And you can see what we've essentially done here is we've increased the relative weight of the strength versus other elements. Their argument was more important than grammar individually or citations individually. And the total for this rubric is updated along with it. So now there's a total of 25 points. They're not evenly spread out anymore. I, just out of habit over the years, have always just switched it to custom points straight away, even if it's for the most part a pretty standard grid. It does just give you more room for flexibility. We're going to be able to apply personalized comments when we actually go to use this rubric. We don't add them here because right now we're just making the standard grid that everyone sees. But when we actually go to score people, we're going to be able to put unique, tailored comments for each individual that only they will see. And that reminds me of another point I wanted to make. Just because this grid now says 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, doesn't mean that you can't still pick numbers in between. I can still do 9.5s and 9s and 8.5s based on your observation and how you want it to grade. That also is something, though, that we're going to apply once we actually go to use this rubric. So this grid itself is pretty nice to fill out. And like I said, the math for the total was updating as I went. There is an area just below here, though, for overall score that doesn't do as good a job of updating as you create your rubric. It's a little bit frustrating, actually, because it didn't, for instance, add a 5th level, even though I added a 5th level up above. And it didn't calculate these numbers based on any changes I made to my relative weights. So unfortunately, we end up having to do a little bit of manual work here to make the overall score make sense. And it's not something that we could just turn off, or else, honestly, I would turn it off. I would keep the total, the running total, but I wouldn't have the rubric try to put their overall score into a level as well. But it is something that the system just forces. So what that means is for our ranges, basically, for overall level, I end up doing a little bit of math. You can think about it this way, right? What overall score do you think you would consider to be level 5, right? It's not as clean cut as just only perfect, because if they got almost perfect, that still maybe is a level 5, not a level 4. What I usually do is I'll look at the next column down. So if we look at level 4, I add up all of the scores that would have given a student a level 4. We would go 8 plus 4 is 12, plus 4 is 16, plus 4 is 20. If they got all level 4s, they're a solid 20. What if they do a little bit better than that? Would I consider a 21 to be level 5? Maybe that's still level 4 to me. This is open-ended. You can decide what your cutoffs are, but as a starting point, that's what I'll do. 6 plus 3 is 9, plus 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15. So maybe a little bit better than a 15 will be my starting point for the level 4 range. So as I said, this is saved as we went. Every time I made a change, it was saving. There's a little saved icon here. Every time I make a change, you'd see that flash. It's also published by default here, although that is a status that I could change. I could make this draft if I was concerned that it wasn't finished and I didn't want students to see it yet. But I'm going to leave it published now. And if I click close, we'll see that we've created this new thing.